Okay. Welcome, everybody. Tom's going to take it away so that I don't take up any of his time.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you for inviting me to this meeting. And I want to thank the Texas Society for this opportunity. My talk today is going to be, does workplace bullying exist in the orthotics and prosthetics profession? Well, I'll tell you a little bit about my background. Some of you may know me. I see familiar faces in the chat room, and it brings back fond memories of teaching you at Northwestern. So I entered the field back in the 80s, back when I had, not only did I have more hair, I could actually blow dry it. However, I worked at the old family-owned hangar back in the day when I got out of school. I worked for 20 years. I was on faculty at Northwestern, where I went from junior instructor all the way up to director by the time I left. And more recently, I had worked at the VA hospital here in the Chicagoland area, and I left 2 years ago. Since that time, I've been more or less concentrating on my doctoral design. And as we say, I don't want to say I'm unemployed, but I'm in between jobs. How's that? So that's my background. And this topic tends to be something that's close to my heart, and I'll get into that. But before I actually get into the talk, I want to do a little exercise. And it's one that is used primarily when we're talking about bullying in grammar schools, but it holds a lot, and it's a very nice visual, I think, that people can hold on to. So I just want to take this paper, and basically let's hear some of the things that I grew up with, as far as we want to talk about bullying, mobbing, harassment. So, let's just say when I got out of school, it's like, you're never going to amount to anything. You just came out of school. You just can't find your rear end with both hands. Okay. So, oh, you put the foot on backwards? Here, let me show the patient what you just did. Here, let me tell you a joke. These two gay guys go into a bar, or based on my last name. Hey, let's talk about, how many Polish jokes do you know? Oh my gosh. Or also other things that I heard from former residents that were females. Wait, if I hire you, are you going to get pregnant and go on maternity leave right away? Oh my God, you have a stripper's name. You should change your name, and if you want to be taken seriously in this field. And then when it's all done, it's all finished, everybody goes, oh gee, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I was just teasing you. All better, right? All better. So the person's psyche is so much better just because you made that simple apology. It's not true. It doesn't work that way. And as you know, from children being bullied in school, they carry it through their whole life. Well, we go through the same things in our field, and I've listened to it for 20 years as faculty. I've heard the horror stories from residents. When I'm working at the VA, you see it all day long. So I'm not just some doctoral student, that's trying to get, and yes, I'm in the sunset of my career, but it's still something that I want to do. I want to pursue educational excellence, which is why I'm doing this. Now, quite frankly, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that I have no financial disclosures. This is part of my studies for my doctoral program. I do want to say thank you to my dissertation team, and some of you may know who that one person is. Well, my chair is Pamela Conkle. She's an amazing individual. My lead professor at Concordia, Patricia Hinchy, is a renowned author of educational material, who I was actually surprised. Pam and Pat are good friends. She actually asked if she could be part of my dissertation team, so I feel tremendous amount of stress to perform well. And then the last person, you all know, Professor Bunsen Honeydew, Gerald Stark. Oh, and that makes me Beaker. So anyways, I just want to let you know that that's my dissertation team. So what are the objectives of this lecture? What do I hope for you to when I talk to you for the next 45 minutes? The important aspect here is I'd really like you to understand the definition of terms. We're going to talk about them. I want to impress upon you characteristics of bullying, mobbing, and harassment. So if you see it or you feel it, you might want to take like a survey to see, are you in jeopardy? Are you a target? Is this something that you may not be aware of? And then I'm going to talk about the survey that I used. It is one of many surveys or tools, I should say, that are used in the field of bullying, mobbing, and harassment, but it's one that's been used on all the continents. But from our point of view, the reason I'm bringing it forth to the industry, not only am I trying to, as Jerry talked about in the last lecture, if you sat through his talk about how we're trying to cater to the patient, his emotional intelligence lecture talks about the health of the worker. So too, I want to talk about the health of the worker. I also want to impress upon the cost to the company. If you allow a bully to operate in your company, you are losing valuable money. And in today's age, I'm sitting through the same lectures you are through this whole time. You're talking about reimbursement, how much harder it is to get money. Why don't you look in the mirror? The company should look in the mirror and see, how can I improve the environment so that people are more engaged? And so this way they'll be more apt to be involved and invested in your company. And thus you have a happy employee. You're going to find that your profits go up. But most of all, those of you who have been considered targets by perpetrators, understand you are not alone. You're not the only one that has gone through this experience. There are many. And as I do more and more research, and I've been going through thousands of material, thousands of articles, thousands of dissertations, the amount of research that I've done in the last 2 to 3 years, you come to realize that a lot of people are bullied. So please understand you're not alone. So what is the problem? Well, various authors estimate that between 27 to 90, was it 96%? I'm in the way of the numbers here. Various authors estimates from 27 to 96% of the workforce report bullying. Now, that is a wide spectrum. Why is it you have 27% and in some case you have 96%? Well, it's real simple. If you look at the citations that I use, Gary Namey and Ruth Namey are husband and wife team. And if you ever want to follow, if you're really interested in this topic, go to the workplacebullyinginstitute.org. And it is a tremendous resource for the United States. This husband and wife team have been doing surveys every 2 years, and they are like the foremost authorities in the United States on this topic. And they give a plethora of resources for people to look at. When they look at surveys, when they do surveys, they look at a time frame between 6 to 12 months. Shavin, the other citation there in 2014, was an author in the Forbes magazine in which he cited a study that was done by Vital Smarts. And Vital Smarts is a company out of Utah that does crucial conversations. And they looked at and they surveyed over 3,000 individuals. Have you been bullied sometime in your career? That citation found that 96% of the people reported, yes, I've been bullied. Whereas if you scale it down to 6 to 12 months, you find that it's going to be around 27%. In fact, the latest numbers coming, it's really disturbing because the latest numbers coming out of NAMI from the 2021 survey show that 34%, 35% people have reported bullying, and it's incrementally going upwards, which is disturbing. It's a disturbing trend. So if you look at something between 6 to 12 months, you're finding about 30%. Over the course of a career, you're going to see increased numbers. I just want you to understand that. So workplace bullying is being addressed more frequently. People are more aware because of the emotional cost to the target. As I showed you in my demonstration, it doesn't just go away with a simple apology. And it's not just the target, it's the witnesses. The witnesses that see it happening understand that they're on that spectrum too, because it could happen to them if that person leaves. They could be the replacement target all of a sudden. So there's a lot of strain. Companies and corporations now are recognizing the need to address it because of the cost to the company. One bully can cost an organization upwards of $2 million a year. Now, that seems like an extreme amount. However, there's so many variables that I'm going to get into as far as the cost to the organization. The reason we're talking $2 million per year can be through a sexual harassment lawsuit, or maybe somebody did take down and document the bullying that's occurring, and they turn around with a legal action against that company. That's where a lot of the big, once again, it's a gray area. It's not just simply replacing somebody. There's a lot more that goes into it, which we're going to get more into in depth. We're going to drill deeper into that one. So let's talk about the definition of the behavior. And this, I have a little bit of a differencing of opinion with some of the researchers from the United States versus the other continents, or say European authors, which I'll explain. Bullying is, there is no accepted one accepted definition. Different authors offer different perspectives. Obviously, I turn to Namey and Namey as far as some of it, but Manners and Cates also. What I've done is, for this definition, I've used the key phrases for bullying: repeated and health-harming mistreatment of one or more perpetrators. And that's where I differ. I look at bullying as a one-on-one, whereas a lot of the authors in the United States look at more than one. And I'm going to get into, I consider when you start to get people ganging up on you, I look at that as mobbing. And I'm going to get more into that. Now, one-on-one simply could be male to male. It could be male, female. It could be female on female, which is called the queen bee syndrome. And on the spectrum of bullying, female to female sometimes produce some of the worst results as a female bullying another female than even a male and female. Or it could be female and male. So there's a lot of different spectrums of one-on-one, but we're talking about a one-on-one. It's usually a power indifference, a power imbalance. And the reason I tailor it more towards a resident with a residency director, because in our field, it seems where I've gotten most reports on phone calls when I was director of prosthetics at Northwestern was from residents that were getting bullied. You either give me a good reply to the NCOPE surveys, or I'm not signing your papers for you finishing your residency, that kind of stuff, you know? So I used to hear a lot of that. So it's a negative behavior over time. Now, mobbing is a term that is more popular in Europe. And the reason I say that is because Heinz Lehmann, the citation I used here, he basically talked about it. In fact, he found it to be so detrimental, he called it, in his early studies of when he got into this, he called it psychological terror. And what he was looking at, he was researching why were nurses committing suicide. And he was looking and researching at what the nurses were going through, because it wasn't just doctors on yelling at the nurses. It wasn't the nurse practitioners, but it was patients' family and attacking the nurses. And I'm sure there's stories in our field where the patient's family attacks us as practitioners. However, mobbing comes from, he got that term from the animal kingdom, in which they specifically looked at birds and the animal kingdom. Like, say a hawk were to enter into and wanted to steal eggs from a different bird's nest and whatever, the birds tend to attack that hawk to get them out of the environment. Well, ganging up on a target is similar. You know, you find that Lehman laid out 4 phases in which he talked about a triggering incident. And it could be something simple. It could be innocent, that the target didn't even realize, may have said something, didn't mean it, but now the supervisor decides to use it as a triggering device, in which he starts to get the other workers on their side to attack that individual and basically alienate them. The next phase is, because of that alienation, you find that the target starts defending their reputation. But you know, I'm qualified. I didn't do anything. I did this. I'm certified. I can do this, but I'm being attacked, blah, blah, blah. The supervisor then turns around within the corporation and starts labeling it so that the upper level corporate design starts labeling, also believing what the supervisor is saying, and believes that label, it may be unfairly designed. However, the company now, and that's the difference between bullying and mobbing, is that there's corporate support of the supervisor that's causing the problem. The last phase ends up unfavorable for the target. It's expulsion, whether the target's going to leave, whether or not that person ends up getting fired. It's unfavorable, but that's usually mobbing, and there's other actors involved with the that gang up on the target. Now, sexual harassment we're very familiar with. It's negative actions against someone due to protected classes outlined by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission or the Civil Rights Act of 1964. If you look, we know what we're more familiar with when you hear the buzzword, not buzzword, it's the one that we're most familiar with is sexual harassment. Okay, it's gender related, but it's not just harassment's not just gender. It could be religion, it could be culture. Remember I said earlier in my demonstration how I grew up, oh, hey, did you hear the latest Polish joke? Well, guess what? That's harassment. That's cultural harassment these days. You can't do that kind of stuff. Wait, these two gay guys went into a bar, or someone's questioning your lifestyle choices. That's harassment. That's illegal. You can't be doing that anymore. And so if you've ever been to in the most recent times, if you've been to the national meetings, the female leads of the different organizations of ABC, NCOPE, AOPA, the Academy, they have a panel discussion where they talk about sexual harassment. They do an amazing job giving information about microaggression, and they talk about as far as resources that people have, and they talk about the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission to go to. And I tend to agree with NAMI and NAMI on this one. Human resources may not be a great system because human resources tends to work for the company, not for the employee, more times than not. So anyway, so harassment is basically based on protected classes. You can't attack someone for their religion, for culture, for race, for gender. I think you get the idea here. So those are the basic definitions that if you come away with those, the difference between those definitions, you're going to go a long ways in understanding now. So how did I get started? Well, what did I say earlier? Growing up, I was the smallest kid in class. I got made fun of. The only reason I didn't get in, I wasn't bullied that much, is because I was also the fastest kid in class. So guess who got chosen to be on the baseball teams and all the teams, because I could run to first base faster than anybody. So that kind of offset being small. Personal experience. Yes, like I talked about, not just in school, but yeah, when I got out of prosthetic school, it's that apprentice bullying. Here, I'm going to give you all the hardest patients because you know what? That's going to toughen your skin. It's what you need. You got to earn your stripes to get in this field. Here, go clean the plaster trap. Here, go. My patient just dirtied up the toilet. Why don't you go clean that? Or here, I can't. I don't want to deal with this guy here. It's a hip dysartic. You deal with it because you know you're the college graduate. You know more. So yeah, I've been down the same road that everybody else has. And then in the last one is I've also spent many of phone calls comforting former students, and I still do. In fact, true story, a week ago, one of my former students called me, pull over to the side of the road, was hysterical on the phone call because their boss is just treating them horribly. And they're asking for me, what should I do? And that's a precarious situation. You need a job to pay the bills. How do you navigate all this? So it gets to a point where, you try to comfort them the best way you can and give them avenues in which to go to, but I'm still acting as mentors for a lot of these individuals. So yeah, that's how I got into doing this study, because I had to take the knowledge of hearing it and we have no peer-reviewed literature in O&P. So I wanted to put some substance to it to say, yeah, it exists. It's there. And it's something to pay attention. And I'm going to reference Jerry Stark's studies on emotional intelligence, and also his results that he just posted on O&P listserv talking about burnout. They're parallel. I'm going to tell you right now, it's all parallel. So this actually, in fact, I'll tell you, my chair was actually teasing me. She's like, listen, she goes, why? Originally, I wanted my dissertation to be on, does it exist? And she just laughed in my face. And so that's kind of an oxymoron. I'm talking about bullying, and I got my dissertation chair laughing at me. Anyways, she says, why? You said that you had the females in your profession already talk about the fact that sexual harassment exists. You have a manufacturer that sponsors a women's association talking about harassment. You have all these, you have the alliance of your profession came out with policy stating that, or you're against bullying and aggression in the workplace. So your profession's already admitted that it exists. So you know it's there. Let's fine tune it. Let's narrow your focus. And so, okay, fine. So my dissertation is going to be more about the emotional fallout. I want to know what happened to individuals afterwards. Do they still have, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but I'm going to talk about how I narrow it down. But being that I'm a doubting Thomas, it wasn't good enough. After I handed in my first 3 chapters for review, I had to put the survey out because I just couldn't let it go. So I did the survey last fall, and I wanted to find out. I looked at, does bullying exist? And so I started off with just the standard questions for just reference. Is it gender-based? Is it generational based? And is it degree related? You know, because I hear the stories where the MPO people are going out and they're working for individuals that went to the schools back in the day when there's more fabrication, and all they hear is, oh, that's not the school I went to. They're not teaching you anything anymore. Well, and it opens up doors for bullying. So what I decided to do, I used the negative acts questionnaire. And what is that? It is a tool. It's no different than the amputee mobility predictor. It is but one tool. We have the amputee mobility predictor. We have the timed up and go tool. So too do we have different bullying tools. I happen to use the negative acts questionnaire because it has it's the highest rated reliability tool that we have. And it's been used on various continents. Now it's the one that we use is revised. It originally was developed by Stahl Einerson, Helga Hohl, and Guy Notelars for exposure. It was originally developed in 1991. The problem was it was developed for Norway and the culture of Norway. So when other countries wanted to use those questions and you tried to translate it, it was really developed for the culture of that country. It didn't translate well to, say, the Far East. It didn't translate well to Southeast Asia. It didn't translate well, say, necessarily in Europe or the Western continents. So the authors decided to retool it in 2001, which is why it's called the revised version. Now it's more applicable to different cultures around the globe. And originally it's a 22-item survey with 3 themes. Talks about work-related bullying, person-related bullying, and physical intimidation. Now, what I did was I added a couple extra questions. And so my methodology was a mixed method in which I started off with, I just asked for gender, generation, education, design, attended. I made a little bit of a mishap with that question. However, I still was able to glean a lot of information. I'll get more into the weeds on that one. And then I administered the NAQR, and which it's similar to a Likert design, which it's never, occasionally, monthly, weekly, daily. And then I opened up for people to have open comments, because the questionnaire, when I administered it in September and left it, or October, roughly fall, It's for the past 6 months. Well, guess what? We were shut down for a pandemic. So things were that affected some of my results. So that's why I wanted open comments. I wanted people to be able to voice their opinions. The survey was open for basically about a month. I ended up getting 341 respondents with, even though SurveyMonkey claimed there was a 100% completion rate, unfortunately, 14 participants chose not to answer every question. So I had 327 fully completed surveys. Now, why didn't they choose to answer every question? Because some of them said that they weren't working in the field anymore. They wanted to just unload in the comments section, and that they did. And I'll get into that. And then, interesting enough, the most avoided question, have you experienced physical violence? That was very telling. I'll get into that too. And now, is there a hidden meaning behind that? I don't know, but it's very disturbing to me. Now, the results of this, I had 147 responses that were female, 194 responses that were male. Okay. Generation, the baby boomers, I had 68 responses, 9 female. Now, this is a very, very interesting slide in and of it. It's very self-explanatory. It really is a microcosm explanation of the changing guard in our field. Okay. I'm a baby boomer. You can see 9 female, 59 male. I went to school. I went to prosthetic school in 1986. And once again, my class at Northwestern was all male. There were no female. Okay. And even when I started in 1992 teaching at Northwestern, it was predominantly male. If we had 1 or 2 females in a class, that was extraordinary. And but 20 years later, by the time I left, it was over 50% female. So you can see that in this data. I had 151 responses that were Generation X, 64 female, male 87. You could start to see the changing of fluctuating of the entry of the females breaking the glass ceiling. Millennials, 122 responses. Now look at this. It's more female responded than male. And if you look at, and as chairman of NCOPE, I'm privy to a lot of this, the data, but in the last 4 years, when you look at the applications to the schools, you're seeing an increase of more than 50% female applicants to the schools, and the male applicants are dropping. And so you're seeing this big switch in gender. Now, Generation Z, I thought I might be able to capture a beginning of it, but nobody reported as Gen Z. And it's like this picture I found, I didn't even know there's Generation Alpha now. I had no idea. So I'm learning as I go too. Now, education level, I kind of, in my mind, I knew what I wanted to ask. However, when it came out, I had to reevaluate this because one person bothered not to answer this. And I'm like, well, why did the person avoid it? I couldn't understand for the life of me. And it's because of the question I asked. And once again, it was faulty question design on my part, but I still got the percentages that it still helped me out here. No formal training, 12 responses, high school, 23 responses. In other words, by no formal, I meant people were hired off the street as technicians and then built their way up from there. Technician and assistant programs, there were only 6 responses. Then I asked BS and or certificate. And this is where the problem comes in. I had 178 people respond that they got a certificate of training. Now, this is where the problem is. They could have gotten their certificate with a high school diploma, some of the older baby boomers, when they went to school, because Northwestern didn't switch over to an associate's degree till 1994. So up until that point, you could have had a high school degree and still got a certificate. So I made a little bit of a blunder there. And when I redo this, and I do plan to redo this survey again in the future, I'm going to redesign this question. Then some individuals that literally went to like UW or UT Southwestern, those people have a BS and O&P. I had 40 responses. And then you could see that the individuals that have a master's degree, I had 82 responses. So it was very telling there. So let's look at the NAQ, the actual survey itself. The survey requested behavior from the past 6 months. Now, this could also is very problematic in that if you look at the fact that it was open in October, take it 6 months earlier. Point of discussion. Since the report is asking for behavior during April to September, I know a lot of individuals that were furloughed or clinics were kind of working at minimal level. So is that a point of contention? Yes, I can't hide from that one. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. Yeah, it affected it, but it's amazing how it still I still received some interesting results even during the pandemic. The top 5 questions of the most behavior yielded 50% positive behavior reported in the past 6 months. Now, why is this important? Because I'll show you this and say, well, some people reported occasionally. Yeah, that occasionally builds into monthly, builds into weekly, builds into daily. The top 10 questions yielded at least 35% behavior in the past 6 months. Now, this is during a pandemic, which is very telling. So let's take a look at the top 5 questions. And now I'm going to refer to my outline because I'm blocking my own percentages here. So let's take a look at what I have here. Work stress causes a lack of sleep. That's almost 64% of the respondents said occasionally, monthly, weekly, and daily. You can see that in red letters. The reason I say that's positive because it's cumulative. You find that behavior tends to be cumulative. And so when you have work stress, and that's a characteristic of bullying, if you're losing sleep at nighttime, that is one of the telltale signs that maybe, just maybe, there's something going on at work. Now, once again, I'm also a realist. It could be the home life too. That's something that we have to separate out. Your work is affecting your home life. So it's getting in the way of maybe going to your children's, I don't know, dance recital or baseball, or it's causing strain with the marriage. And the comments are very telling. So almost 62% of the people reported that. Once again, a telltale characteristic is that something's affecting the home life. Now, can it be the home life itself? Yes, but it's something that needs to be investigated a little further. Having your opinion ignored at work, that is an absolute telltale sign of bullying in the work spot, where you go to a meeting and you try to interject an idea and you're completely ignored in the faculty meeting or the staff meeting. You're not even considered in the meeting. Like, once again, being excluded. Boss withholds information from you. Hey, you walk up to your boss, your supervisor, say, hey, I just heard this. I didn't even know about it. Well, we didn't feel it was necessary for you to know. That kind of behavior starts to build. And if you're being ignored at work, then you're not being taken seriously. That's something that has to be investigated. Now let's look at the next series. Order to work below level of competence. And once again, I told you about mine. This is like you were talking about. Now we're dropping down below 50, but it's still almost 46%. What did I have to do when I started work? When I started where I was at? You know what? Why don't you just clean the lab? Why don't you go clean the plaster trap? I can't tell you how many times. And nowadays, and once again, I understand that these are typical clinical duties that you have to do. Even when I worked at one of the top rehab hospitals here, everybody has cleanup duty. I get it. But if you are the only one that is targeted to do that, then you're being ordered to work below your level. Or else, instead of getting your own patients, you're told, oh, go fill these casts. You're not ready to see patients independently, or, I'm not, you're being, your job description, you have a job description. If you're brought below that, and that's something to pay attention. Now, this is interesting in that I didn't list it here, but I will tell you, I did break down gender on each category. And this one here was much more skewed for the females being asked to work below their level of competence than the males were. It's very telling. This next question, it's gray, but let me explain what I meant by that. Exposed to unmanageable workload. Once again, I sit through national lectures. I'm part of national committees. I understand that in today's world, it's about reimbursement. Time is money. You can't spend an inordinate amount of time on individuals because your profit margin starts to shrink. I get that. What I'm talking about here is being exposed to unmanageable workloads in which the person, and this may not have come across clearly in the instructions, where if someone wants to get rid of you, they literally dump everything on you to try to overload you so much that it literally squashes you. That's what I'm talking about, exposed to unmanageable load, where they know your boss knows you can't handle it, but then they're going to document it to use it against you later on and say, well, you didn't live up to your expectations. You didn't meet quota. You didn't do this. We're going to have to let you go. Spreading gossip about you. That one was what, 36, almost 37%. Oh, come on. We have a grapevine that runs long and deep in this profession. I don't care what city you're in. I don't care what region you're in. And some people even have the grapevine running nationally. People talk about everybody, and it happens. But once again, these are characteristics of bullying. When somebody starts to start rumors about you, you're being targeted. Or excessive micromanaging your work. You have a boss that doesn't trust you, it constantly micromanages you. Or repeated reminders of you may have made a mistake, when you came in the first month, and yet it's constantly brought up over and over and over. Once again, repeated mistreatment behavior. It's a signal. So that was disturbing enough. But the hidden meaning here, the question on physical violence, that's the one that kind of threw me a little bit. Now, yes, 96% of the individual reported never that they were, but 4% of the population reported occasionally, monthly, or weekly. 3 male, 8 female reported that there's behavior. And it stunned me to see that anybody report weekly, they go into work and they're subjected to physical violence. That's unconscionable to me. And then 11 people chose not to even answer that question. Now, why was the avoidance there? Is there something going on there? But the workplace should not be a place where you fear physical violence. That needs to be addressed. Far more disturbing was the qualitative comments. 146 respondents of the 341 wrote comments. That 65 of the 194 male, 81 of the 147, because you can see the big difference. Over 50% of the female population chose to respond in comment form, in narrative, what had happened to them. And for the sake of anonymity, and I promised anonymity to all the individuals when they took the survey, but I can tell you that as someone who's been in the field for over 35 years, it even set me backwards, and I was shocked by some of the things I read. I don't understand. If we're supposed to be elevating to a medical profession, then we need to elevate our game and our attitudes, as our professional attitudes. Then this is what changed my focus for the dissertation. And this is what I was talking about. Now, what I want to do is, based on the comments, I am going to look at qualitatively individuals that have left our field because of this. Now, are they, as you can see by the picture I have, some of the individuals still may have, if PTSD isn't just a military issue, it's individuals that have suffered mental trauma over time. Now, why did these people leave, and can they not operate in the profession anymore? Can they not take a job? I want to know what the fallout is, the emotional fallout after the fact. So that's what my focus of dissertation is on. So that's what I'm going to look at. Now, I'm just going to do themes. To protect anonymity, I'm looking at the qualitative. So the reason I'm looking at the male population is because I found it interesting that 13 individuals simply reported never bullied. You could have left it blank, but you said Nope, never bullied. And so I had multiple male criticize the survey as stupid. I don't even want to repeat some of the things that were said. And I actually thought, believe it or not, I thought it was a joke. I thought it was like some of the former students having fun with me. I thought it was some of my colleagues joking around with me. And when I checked in, they're like, no. So these are real comments that were heavily criticizing me. And to those individuals, I want to say thank you. You're the reason I'm doing this research, to try to make this field better. Okay. 7 male individuals changed jobs. They couldn't take it anymore. They just changed. Multiple individuals complained of the quality of students coming out of school. It's not really bullying, but my only comment to that is as a suggestion, as the chairman of NCOPE, let me give you a suggestion. If you get a resident from a school, please contact the faculty and find out what is it that they learned. No, the school is not the same as when you went. I left Northwestern 10 years ago, and it would be foolish for me to think that they're still teaching the same thing that I did 10 years ago. I would contact the faculty and say, hey, what type of hand skills are the students coming out with? Tell me, what do they know? What is it? What are the standards now? I may not even know the standards. Prepare yourself for a resident. It's not really a bullying comment, but I wanted to bring that out there. Multiple individuals of the male persuasion observed others leaving. Those are witnesses. And when it comes to bullying, mobbing, and harassment, silence is not golden. You need to take an active role, because when that target leaves, you may be put in that position. So you need to understand that silence is not golden. And there were some individuals that wrote some very disturbing comments, how they're in counseling, and this individual is in counseling because it has strained his marriage to the point that he's trying every way he can to save the marriage. It's not just one person. There's other individuals that are going through this problem. But then the female population, only one reported never bullied, but she didn't just say never bullied. She was very kind about it. She says, oh, no, I've never been bullied. I've had a very enjoyable profession. I've been treated with respect, which was very nice. I thought it was a very nice comment. But this next one was really catching my eye here. 18 comments that I can, based on the definition, can be construed as sexual harassment. That's 22% of the female population that responded that can literally document this as sexual harassment. If it can be documented and found to have evidence, they could turn around and file lawsuits against that company. Now we talk about the cost to the company, and I'll get more into that. More of the females reported that they changed employment due to negative behavior. And that's where some of the people decided not to write the NAQR, because they left the field to either teach or work for a manufacturer to get away from that kind of behavior. Some of the stories that they wrote down, I'm not going to repeat, but honest to God, they're just horrible, including one here. There were questions. There were multiple female individuals that reported that when they interviewed for a job, they literally were asked if they're going to start a family. Are you going to get pregnant? Because then that means I have to pay you for maternity leave and you're not going to be here. What good are you then? I was stunned when I read these comments. How can you ask that question in an interview? That's just insane to me, knowing that that's a total breach of the Civil Rights Act. There are individuals that said that they're racially gaslighted on a daily basis. Imagine that, daily basis, they're racially gaslighted. Once again, I said it earlier, there are some women that are told to change their name if they want to be taken seriously. And then same thing, many of the females had reported they were seeking counseling. So in general, here's one that kind of still bothers me too. There were some people reported that when they were in school, they felt the instructors were sexually harassing them. Inappropriate touching is the exact phrases that I got. On a personal note, there were some comments that named some of my former students as bullies, and it bothers me because I know these individuals in school and they were nothing like that. So I don't know. It's hard to say, did they change? Is it I don't know, but it bothers me when I see individuals that I literally know personally that are named as bullies. Many of the people that commented wanted to volunteer for my research, and I offer that to anybody here, that if you have stories that of things that have happened to you and it's affecting you down the road, I want to hear from you, and I'll give you my my contact information. And then one comment: thank you to my Canadian respondent. I can't thank you enough, who painted a very happy work environment in Canada. And yes, I know you're not 10 ply. And for anybody who watches Letterkenny, you'll understand that joke. So let's talk about the study, the discussion points. Yes, it was performed during the shutdown. Does this influence? The answer is yes. I'm going to have to do it again. The percentages show, but based on percentages of the reporting, percentages show that millennial females with a master's degree are the ones reporting the most behavior over the male population. And probably no surprise to people with that one. Negative behavior percentages increase with the generation. So from baby boomer to Gen X to millennial, you see an increase of bullying reporting. Now, why is that important? Because like I said, it's cumulative. It attacks physical and emotional fallout later. MPO and technicians reported the highest percentages, and I get it. There were technicians that were commenting how they're completely grounded, bullied into the ground by the practitioners. Be a little nicer to the technicians. They're the ones that are doing the fabrication. Teach them. If you're not liking how they do the end result, you might want to teach them how you want it. So, all right, Tom, I get it. Land your plane. What are you trying to say here? Okay. So basically, when we look at physical characteristics of bullying, the body hates stress. Bullying creates stress. Mobbing creates stress. Harassment and keeping it inside creates inner stress. The body hates stress. So if you're coming home from work with nonstop headaches, if you're on blood pressure meds because of work, if you find yourself, like, look at the student that called me last week, pulled over to the side of the road, was having an anxiety attack and called me to help calm them down. If you're having intestinal issues where your diet is screwed up, if you're having just tremors, nausea, chest pains, you poor concentration, believe it or not. Yes, as we get older, we lose cognitive ability. However, stress speeds up that process. So if you're being strained, or what I talked about, Jerry's research that he just posted several days ago on burnout. Look up the Maslow burnout inventory and take the inventory to find out if you're showing signs of burnout. Jerry's results were stunning. How office managers, and I got it right up on my other computer screen here, office managers are registering 45.47 as percent by staff members at 44. That's 45% of the people registering on a scale of burnout. And so you're seeing that as he said it, 43.9% of the people in this entire profession are classified at risk. That's amazing. And burnout and bullying work parallel. Okay, so you understand that this stuff speeds up the aging process. Now, it also that aging process attacks your memory, your mental cognizance, your indecisiveness. And if you walk around all day long saying, "Oh, why did they choose him for this for the job? The world sucks. The world's after me. I can't win in this world." Sorry to say, you may have these effects. Now, the effects to companies. Why am I saying it to the companies? Because if you are looking as a company, you have the responsibility. OSHA tells you itself that you are responsible for providing a healthy environment, not just a physical for safety reasons, but a lot of people consider that a gray area for psychological health. So if you want, you should look for signs of bullying and mobbing and harassment. because it costs you money. Now, Jerry said it in his last lecture. You start attacking the office manager who's under a lot of stress. And what did he say? They call in sick more. Exactly right. Bullying studies, there's research out there that say that a bullied employee will average almost 2.5 more sick days a year than a healthy employee. So if you start to see your workers inordinately starting to call in sick, as they call it, I need a mental health day, okay? Or they're doing frequent errors, or they're making a lot of mistakes. The employee seems anxious. You can tell when someone's on edge, or if they can't rebound from a simple stressful situation, like something simple, like maybe a screw popped off and they lose it. Or the other thing is frequent turnover. If your company is seeing frequent turnover, you might want to look in the mirror and say, what's causing that? Is it the company? Is it me? You might want to just look and analyze. But the best term that I want to talk about is called presenteeism. And that's basically being a zombie at work, okay? You see the picture I have. If you ever saw Office Space, perfect example. He goes to a hypnotist. He says, hey, is there any way that you can kind of like zonk me out so that I don't even know I'm at work? And later on, he says, hey, Bobs, to the two Bobs. On any given day, I'd say I probably do 15 minutes of real work. That's presenteeism. You go to work, but you're not engaged. Hey, guess what? That employee is costing you money because they're not engaged. So you might want to think of a way to get them involved and investigate. So my recommendation, I know I'm running low on time, I better shut up. Encourage a review. Look at the company policy or on workplace bullying. If you don't have one, design one. Even as an owner, you might want to look at a healthier work environment. So look at OSHA, look at EEOC, look at the alliance of the academy, the ABC, NCOPE, all those that are part of the alliance. Look at the statement. Review the company policy. Number 2, be proactive. If you're a company owner, you might want to have some type of like maybe offer up a Maslow burnout test, or maybe look at offering up training and by training, I mean emotional intelligence. If you've never studied emotional intelligence, and Liz talked about Jerry's talk on emotional intelligence, there is research that shows that possibly offers an offset. Emotional intelligence is basically, in a nutshell, is how you, by controlling your feelings in each environment, helps control other people's environment too. In a really goofy analogy is Star Wars. If you're a Jedi Knight and you know how you've got the Force, not only do you control your emotions, you control others' emotions. I know that's a ridiculous analogy, but that's kind of emotional intelligence. You're able to control your response to every situation in a calm manner. And in fact, some corporations now, believe it or not, in big corporations, now I'm not talking about an OMP, I'm talking about in general, some corporations test management before they hire them on their emotional intelligence, and then they have a working interview in which they'll work for a month to see how this person responds before they actually offer them the job permanently. But emotional intelligence tends to offset, so they don't bully their workers, and they tend and so my suggestion is pick up the book by Daniel Goleman, Emotional Intelligence. Kind of gives you an idea of what that's all about. And the last one is get rid of the bully if you can. If you read Namey and Namey and you go to the Workplace Bully Institute, only 5% of the bullies are ever fired and only 6% are punished. That's 11%. The other 89%, guess who? That's the targets end up being the ones either leaving or victimized or moving. So the bottom line is a happy work environment equals a happy employee. You have an engaged person and you have a productive employee. So my future direction really is to look at emotional fallout. I'm going to redo the results that I did because I want to get a little deeper into the weeds, but I'm also going to offer up that survey again and improve the questioning. My references are available. I have plenty of references if you need. And basically, I just want to say thank you. And if you have any questions, either I don't know, I guess just pop them in a chat, or if Liz is there, if you've posted them, I'll be more than happy. I
I'm
do
here.
still have my Northwestern email if anybody wants to contact me. I'm still adjunct.
Let's put it in the chat because I can leave this up while I go get Brinkman ready.
All right.
So if anybody has any questions for Tom, you can chat him right now, or you can turn on your your microphone or your camera. And thanks, Tom. This one always makes me sad.
Well, it's just I'm in the sunset of my career, and I'm just trying to help and see if I can improve the environment for those following in my footsteps. That's all.
Do you think that people are more aware? So the reason you get results in the younger group is because they're more aware than somebody like myself, who's old now and probably wouldn't even have known to say that as an answer if you did that survey like 30 years ago.
Well, if I did it 30 years ago, I probably would have been laughed out of the chat room.
True to what chat room?
Well, exactly.
I'm joking.
The lecture hall.
Yeah,
Because
no, I know.
even when I got out of school, it was like, suck it up. This is part of your training. You need to, you need to grow a skin on you. The younger individuals now that are coming into the field that are millennials, listen, they've been through bullying and harassing and mobbing training in grammar school, high school, believe it or not, even active shooter drills. Liz, you and I we've never experienced stuff like that. What it's like to bar a room. They have different experiences now, and we have to recognize that in our position. And now it's a gray area. I get it, because you have a job description and you have quotas you have to make for funding reasons. I get it, and I understand that, but sometimes the management masks bullying by saying, "Well, you didn't reach your quota," and they're kind of nitpicking at you all day long. It gets to a point where there's ways to do it that are more effective than to kind of nitpick someone about their quotas. But yeah, you're right. The younger generation is more aware of it than when we were, because we were basically just like my parents. You suffer in silence. That's what it was all about. You can't do that because you carry it your whole lifetime.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm going to leave you here. I'm going to mute myself and so that people can connect with you, and I will be over in Brinkman's Healthcare and Ethics.
And when do I shut off? Oh, she went off. All right, never mind. So does anybody have any questions? Either type it in. If you have any, I'd be more than happy to address any concerns, or if you have any criticisms, I'm fine with that. I welcome any and all. So, but if at any point in time you ever have a chance to see Jerry's talk on emotional intelligence, I will tell you that it is a very good lecture. And if you have not seen Jerry's results on the burnout scale that he posted on the OMP listserv on June 22nd, I highly recommend that you go. I think you could see the OMP listserv discussions on onpedge.com. Not sure. But anyways, otherwise, I would just say thank you. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the meeting. And once again, thank you to the Texas Society for this opportunity. It's been great. Thanks all. Oh, what do we got here? Chat, what's this? Was there any appreciable differences in types of practice environment? If you're talking about, I didn't even ask that. If you're talking about like a mom and pop, or yeah, that I figured that's where you're going. See, the problem is a bigger company has more at stake, because if you're like a publicly traded company, you have to be a little bit more careful. Now you have to understand, in our field, we have no unions to protect you. And so if you're working for a one-off company, I don't know what kind of protection I can offer you, because you just have to have a sit down with the owner and ask and have a heart to heart. But you're right, there is a difference between bigger companies and smaller companies. There's no denying that, but I did not separate that out in my research. I hope I answered your question, Matthew. Well, my pleasure. All right, everyone. I don't want you to be late to the other lecture. Once again, thank you all for